Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hello and welcome back, hopefully. We are going to do a Feldenkrais lesson today. And if you're new to Feldenkrais, you really are able to be fully equipped with what we're going to do. What I thought I would do today is deal with something that I am seeing as a clinician a lot of influence of things that are challenging for people. One of which are these things, mass. So, for today's class, I'm going to ask that you grab your mask and have it nearby. But what's really kind of cool, if you don't have a mask, you can have a towel. Because I want you to feel the obstruction of easy airflow within the context of how we're going to dial into a very, very refined sense of awareness. The other thing you might want to have, spread the blanket out and find a space where you have enough room that maybe two mat sizes, because we're going to be moving around more than we have in the last couple times. And I like using a rolled mat as my head support when I'm lying on my side because it's not so big that if I roll onto my back, it doesn't get in my way. So those are the things that I would suggest that you set things up with. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit so that you can get yourself comfortable. And so the last few lessons have been, I think, challenging intellectually because they are trying to bring out the variety of aspects that will become known to you that have been mostly put into your unconscious position of state of things. And so today we're going to bridge the gap with a few things. We're going to move in and out of things that are mostly unconscious, which is going to be breathing in a mask or so. And then we're also going to bring how we're going to play with consciousness into something that's highly developmental in terms of our movement practice. So the way that we can playfully use a sequence of movements to heighten our abilities to have much more clarity. And I heard a term written by one neuroscientist that when we go to our sense of ourselves in our embodied or embodied state, we are constantly upgrading our virtual maps. Now, if we move in the same way, the same choices day in, day out, those virtual maps do get stale and they don't operate with a lot of freedom of choice. So, one of the things that we're doing is that we are subscribing to a way that we can go in and bring that more accessibility to many, many movement options, which therefore gives you a choice to do something in a different way. So, I just pretty much talked about habits without saying habits. So, our unconscious ways of doing things generally run off habits, some good, some not so good. And if we want to do things in a different way, when we don't have to pay ultra attention to every movement that we do on a daily basis, we have to trust that the habits that we're doing are the ones that we would like to have happen. Okay, so there are a few rules to having an optimal experience with a Feldenkrais lesson, and that is try and travel in your movement slowly, just like traveling in a car slow, you see more scenery. Try and move with maybe smaller range, because once you go to the end range, you really lose the essence of the quality that I want you to try and address. I'm going to ask that you notice when you are using certain efforts and when you are having the freedom of effort. That is a discrimination I want you to have. As always, you steer away from pain. That's physical pain, emotional, spiritual, mental pain, any kind of pain. Not because it doesn't happen. And I think at times it's helpful when you're in a state of those degrees of discomfort or whatever, that you can drop into your awareness and then you can have the freedom to not act in a way that may be harmful. Maybe you can do things slightly differently. So smaller the movements, slower the movements, steering away from pain. And finally, your breath is a very strong indicator of noticing what you're doing in the present moment. Now, what I like about an awareness through movement lesson, which is one of the modalities of Feldenkrais, there's very direct hands-on version, but this is what we're doing. It's an awareness of movement lesson, is that your guidance system is you. When you hear me giving you a cue that may be unclear to you, you can look at your screen and see if that's something that you thought it was. But for the most part, you can trust that what you're doing is what you should be doing because I just told you the things you have to attend to. So what you're taking in is my verbal cue and you're interpreting it in the best way you know what it is. And that is something that I'd like you to work on, that mastery, is to trust it and to try and, shelf the dialogue or the narrative that I'm broken or I can't do this, I'm not an athlete, whatever it is, put it on a shelf for a while. Let's go back to some of the primal things that we used to do as children, and we trusted things a lot more in our sense, for the most part, not all of us, but we trusted letting ourselves explore. The lessons generally are about 40 to 45, maybe about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and that is to free up some time at the back end of this. And I'd like you to see if you can, if something pops up along the way, just make a mental note and maybe have that in a discussion board with us. You may not have a question, you just may want to say, this is what I felt, because it brings a lot more to the substance of these lessons. It's a community, and thank you to Santa Monica Yoga that we have this community. So I ask that of you. I would appreciate that. I learn off that. I try and modify what I'm doing for next week's class with that. Okay? So these are lessons and they're puzzles. So we will be doing things that relate to that. I'm going to do that with you today. So I'll do my best with not challenging the sound system and so forth. But that's what we'll work with. Okay? So put your mask aside. Put your head support aside, or you can actually use it to lie on. So we're going to start lying on our backs. And as you're on your back, take a moment to just drop in and sense what it feels like with your back touching the floor. That, for the most part, is a lot less familiar to us because if we're lying on our backs, we're either getting ready to doze off or our attention's somewhere else. But for now, I'd like you to bring your attention to yourself and feel where the weight is more rested in your body, in your skeleton. So notice how your heels are resting. And walk yourself up, feeling how the backs of your legs are resting and how they compare, not just in the position of them, but maybe the shape and size. And then as you travel up, feel where the legs enter into your pelvis, which is the lower part of your trunk, where your buttocks are, and just notice, do you feel like your pelvis is balanced? Is it tilted? Does it seem to feel like it would roll off to one side or the other? And can you use this kind of inquiry or this investigation without looking, without having to kind of jostle or trigger movement in the beginning? And then you can do what you'd like to do to continue to notice. And then walking up, I want you to feel, where's the first introduction to yourself where you feel your spine begins? And a lot of people know anatomy, but not that many people have an internal anatomy knowledge. And I think this body of work has really, really been successful in helping that happen, because you're able to really inquire without fixing something, and there's value to that. So now feel there probably is a flat shape to where your pelvis is resting, and that's the very final end of your spine, which is the sacrum. And then truthfully, it goes beyond that, which is your tail. So just get a sense that there's a flat shape underneath your pelvis. And can you virtually size it up? Can you think about if it's a triangular shaped bone, can you think about how it's shaped? Does it feel drifted to one side? And if you're not really sure of it, that's valuable information because that's a sense of an area that has a lot of detailed information. Now you're moving up the spinal column, and these are where the thickest parts of the joints of the spine are. And as you walk up the spinal column, you'll notice one stacked on the other and going on the other. And it's really more tubular, less than a column. So just kind of travel and feel the range and the arc and feel how it starts to meander upward and then starts to move downward as you travel further up. And now's a good time while we're doing this to just also observe your breath. So as you dial into this detail, what is your breath like? And when do you notice breathing in and breathing out? Follow up the spine and feel the moment that the spine seems to be redirected downward. And as you trace those steps, visualize that the spine's starting to get a little smaller and it meets what's called the thoracic spine, the thorax. It's differentiated because it has ribs. As you continue up the spine, you're just going to, and we won't be this specific, but just imagine you're drawing ribs off the sides. And they go, as you continue, they have a shape. And this might be more of where you'll observe your breath because of the movement that happens in the ribs. So as you continue walking up the spine, notice where the most firm connection to the floor is. And that pretty much gives you a clue of where the curve is the most arced in the upper column. And then you'll wander up some more, and at that point, it should start to drift a little bit with less pressure to the point where it finally leaves pressure and then continues until it breaks contact. And follow it up, and then continue, and then you won't feel where the very top of the spine is at the neck because it's inside the skull. So just sense that it's roughly about the level of where each ear canal is. And if you haven't already, take care of yourself. You can bend your knees. We're going to continue scanning and doing things a little bit longer. So if your legs are bent, just make the subtle adjustments, noticing how that's different, or keep them long. But use the choice to do that when you need to. Now we'll continue up the skeleton and we'll feel where the back of the head's resting. And does that point of pressure feel like it's equally distant between your left ear and your right ear? And now very slowly, begin to roll your head a little bit side to side, noticing where that makes contact, because now we've drawn a central line of your body, but now we're drawing a line that cuts across left and right. And you can see if that is a straight line or does it curve, because the way you use your head movements and you rotate in your spine will dictate the way that point of pressure is too. And are your eyes participating? They can be open or closed, but just ask the question. And then pause in the center. Now take a moment and just draw in where your arms seem to make contact. So feel where the farthest point is from your fingers to where that contact is. Noticing if your palms are turned up or down or somewhere in between. And then walk up, feeling the flesh of your forearms and the back of your upper arms until you feel the relationship to your shoulder blades, which really is the true connection to your attachment of your arms to your body as well as your collarbones. So we don't have contact with the floor with your collarbones, but you're going to do your best to just get a guesstimate of where you think the collarbones are. Because that will help you know that is where your first ribs right underneath. So now you have where we started roughly where the ribs were from the lower aspect, and now we know roughly where the top aspect is. Now, bend your knees and stand your feet if you haven't already, and land them where they're comfortable. And you can take several versions of resting because we will start moving in a moment, but the quieter movements sometimes are difficult to tolerate comfortably. So you're to make adjustments. So the knees can kind of, tilt inward to just rest, or they can stay floating up if that's comfortable, or you can lower them down. Now I want to bring your attention to your breathing. Now, as I talk, I'm doing a different breath than if I were just noticing. So for yourself, are you breathing easily? Are you breathing like you think you're supposed to breathe? And now's the time to differentiate what is the easiest version for you to breathe, because that's a good place to start. And as you breathe in and out, I want you just to track the in breath and the out breath to get a sense of time. And just in your own calculations, count off how long it takes to breathe in and how long it is to breathe out. And for a lot of us, we've had a lot of training. So it may be hard to see what really is an authentic pattern for yourself as you start looking at it. Now, if you can, I'd like you to close your lips, and you can take breaks with that as much as you want. And so with your lips closed, allow yourself to breathe through your nose if you can. If you can't at all, you're so welcome to continue breathing in the way that's easy for you, and just periodically just closing the lips and then releasing them, and then just going with us in the context of imagining it. So as you breathe in and out, can you sense the air passage between your nostrils and following it through the nasal cavities? And see if you can follow it as far as you can, and then when it's reversed. We breathe something like 25,000 times a day. And for the most part, it's unconscious, but it's one of those few functions that we do automatically without paying attention, and we can pay attention to it. So there's many, many influences in our whole being. And then just notice, do you feel movement in your belly when you breathe? And you'll just continue noticing while I talk through this. And one of the things that happens on the in-breath is the diaphragm is engaged. And as it pulls down, it makes space down in the belly to push it away. And then you might feel the belly fill up. The belly's not filling up with air. It's just the feeling of the diaphragm dropping down. And then as it releases, we inhibit it, the diaphragm naturally comes back and it reverses its space. Now, I won't go into a lot of details because I don't want to put you too much into your thinking mode. I want you just to feel as much as we can. So as you breathe in and out, is one nostril more clear to you than the other? Where's your tongue? And I will ask that you rest your tongue. And one idea is when you rest your tongue is to allow it to like you're spreading out a blanket. Just let it soften and just find where it needs to be. Okay. Now, reach over and take your mask. Now, if you don't have a mask, put a cloth over you, however you want to do this. I'm going to see if I can operate this without messing up the sound. No, I'm not going to be able to. Okay. All right, so we're resting the mask. And what's the first thing you notice? Did you change your breath at any time? So if you really listen, you'll notice that you're coming against some resistance, no matter what mask you're wearing. And as you increase the effort to move the air through the resistance, notice that. See if you feel that there was a moment that you did want to shift to mouth breathing. And do you feel a change in the apparatus of your breathing? Are you breathing differently in your chest? Feel your breath three-dimensionally in the back of you, through the sides of you, however you can take in the information. And also allow yourself to feel the support you have on the floor. Now you can take the mask down so it can clear your breathing apparatus. It can go down if it can pull it down, and just take a pause and come back to breathing without the resistance. And dial into the clarity and the subtlety of how it's different. And now what I'd like you to do is I want you to change in a way that might have been one of the possibilities that you did with the mask on. I want you to move more in your chest. I want you to breathe up into your collarbones and let it out any way you want to let it out. You won't change the volume, you won't change the speed. You're going to just change the mechanics. And as you do that, you'll feel an exaggeration rise and fall in your chest. Now give that a rest. Now purposely breathe through your abdomen, through your belly. Now, if any of these are uncertain, you can always rest one hand on your chest or your belly. So now I want you purposely on your in breath, increase the space in your belly, and then let it just deflate naturally. Noticing when you increase the space in your belly, how that affects your spine. And now, just as smoothly as you can, go from one to the other. In your chest, which is called apical breathing, and just let it release, alternating with your belly. Again, you're dancing the movement in your body, but you're really trying to stay consistent to the same volume of air that's being exchanged. We're scientists here, we're testing, this is our lab. And we want to keep certain things consistent. Okay, rest that, rest your legs, however you need to do that. And come back, bring your mask back on. Notice if it's any easier than it was before. Now, let's play with the same breath mechanics. Breathe in through your nose and take a deep breath into your chest at the same time, and then exhale. So you're deepening the space, but still try and keep the volume the same. See what that's like in the resistance of the mask. Now switch to your belly. Now alternate in through the chest, in through the abdomen, resting all the other parts of yourself. Staying with the same rhythm. And rest. Move your mask down for a moment. We have a few more we're going to do. And notice what you notice. Now take your right arm and cross it over your chest to reach the outer side of your ribs on the left. So your right hand is reaching to your left ribs. Take your left hand and cross over like you're hugging yourself. So find a way to navigate your arms that way. Take a moment to feel your breath, your effortless breath, your authentic breath. Now, because your hands are crossed over, your nervous system, your brain, your sensory awareness is getting a little bit confused, and we want that. Because it's interpreting it through the sense of your hands, but it's resting the sensation on your ribs. So just notice that. And then lift your arms up and change the formation so that you're going to put whatever arm is on top to change them over and just rest them again. Now, the sides of our body is called the lateral side of us. So I want you, and some of you have been trained to do this, so this will be familiar. So I want you to recognize the movement of the lateral ribs, and I want your fingers to expand with the inhalation and then contract. So you're mirroring your lateral ribs, which at one time, through evolution, were the gills. And let your belly just stay soft. Relax your neck, make sure that's soft. And bring your arms down again and rest. Maybe roll your head a little bit. Noticing, is that any easier or the same or less? Now take your mask again and position it. Cross any way you want your arms over your chest so that they're resting on the outer rib. And again, draw your attention to the ribs on the sides and allow your fingers to expand and contract in time with your breath.
And always work on the idea of working less. What do you notice as you bring your attention to your ribs? Is the effort more difficult with the mask than when we were doing it just regular with the mask? And I invite you to explore these differences later on when you're wearing a mask, or at least reflect on the experience, because that memory, that map is there. Okay? Now, rest your arms down and take your mask down again. And what's changing? We're self regulating systems. There are many different breath patterns, and Feldenkrais described a potency that we want to subscribe to. And we do benefit from doing certain kinds of breath practices that's gone back eons of people studying this. And we're learning more and more of the value. In fact, I just learned that in our nasal cavities we have erectile tissue. It's the only other part besides our genitals that we have erectile tissue. And nasal breathing possibly uses that erectile tissue to move the air in alternate positions of one nostril or the other to sustain a balance between our autonomic nervous system. So there's a lot of things that we are recognizing the science of, but we've been practicing them differently. Okay, now this time, the last one, you're going to bring your hands towards your face and you're going to let your index fingers touch your nose and then let the rest of your other fingers rest somewhere else. So it's just a light touch on your nostrils. Now, some of you will know how to do this, but remember, doing is only part of it. Imagining the movement is a big part of it. What I want you to do is I want you on your in breath to flare your nostrils, and then on your out breath, let it release. And your fingertips are there not to create any resistance, but to measure the sensation, which means you have to have a very light contact with yourself. And our hands have a huge real estate in our brain, our virtual maps. So now, as you do that, you're drawing in more information. And now, what I'd like you to do is close off just the right nostril. And just use a few breaths that way. Make sure that you're comfortable with what you're doing. And then close your left nostril and breathe through your right. Now let that go. Bring your arms down. That can go on for a while. So in the course of what we'll do today is we'll leave it at that. And take a moment to feel the effects of that. And then reach for your mask one more time. Place it back on. And now feel through the mask of how we were feeling our fingertips. You might feel the warmth of the air. You might feel the slight sensation to the skin sensation of the mask, of the nostrils. We have different innervations and different facial cranial nerves or nerves of our brain that innervate our facial expressions, our nasal openings, the affect of our mouths, and so forth. So imagine how all this mask wearing is impacting our influences of our own self awareness. And now just exaggerate opening and closing the nose. So expanding your nostrils. And then give that a rest. And just see what it's like to wear the mask now. And maybe later today is when you will notice if there's a change of what you've done today. And then slowly take your mask off and set it aside. And as you rest and just notice yourself, one of the things that there's a book out just recently out by, his last name is Nestor, Nestor, and there's a wonderful interview with Fresh Air a couple weeks ago. And one of the things that they have, the reason that have so many breathing problems is through the evolution, our skulls have shrunk so much in the front of our faces. So we are designed to have some obstruction. And now you wonder how our new evolutionary changes will be of wearing masks. And as he says, the evolution doesn't always mean positive change for the fittest. It means change, and we could be changing for not such a good way. So we can direct that now, and that's to be aware of how we're operating ourselves as we change our new environments. Now we're going to let that go. We're going to switch to a little bit more fun lesson, which looks like it doesn't have a whole lot of time. Maybe we'll go into less Q&A time today. So what you'll do is now you're going to lie on your left side, and you'll take your head support and you'll rest on it. Make it so it has a little bit of range in the back of you. So we're on our left side, and our hands are resting one on top of the other, and our knees are stacked on top of each other. And just notice your breath. And as you lie there, slowly lift your right arm up towards the sky until it's pointing directly up, and then bring it back down. Do this several times. Each time when you bring it back down, you fully rest your hand before you restart the next movement. And since we've drawn quite an awareness to our breathing, you might discover that when you interrupt your breath, you can reconnect with it at any time. I can't tell you how many people tell me that they catch themselves holding their breath and they don't know how to change that habit. Well, because after it's happened, the habit's there. So we can practice noticing when we pause our breath and explore it so that our attention's on it. Okay, now rest each palm on top of each other. Now slide your right hand forward and back a few times, keeping your elbow long. Noticing how that massages your ribs, and feel that trickle into your pelvis, remembering where we drew the spine and sensing it. How far away do you sense that motion? And the next time you bring the arm back towards you, slowing it down, you will then lift it up and place it back down. Pause before you start it again. And then slide it forward, slide it back. As you start sliding it back, you drift it up and you bring it back down. And just see what you notice. Does it change the effort? And keep doing it. Finding your own pace. letting your head do what seems to come in naturally. Does it roll? And now rest. Rest all the way through it. So I think the reason this lesson came to me is I really started to, way back when they had fireplaces and they would try and, accentuate the flame in the fireplace, they had these bellows and they had this really interesting way of creating pressure changes to exit out air. And I thought of this, made me think of the bellows of this particular lesson. Now bring your palms back on top of each other again. And now this time what we'll do is however you do the movement easily, you're going to bring the arm up, and then as you bring it to point towards the ceiling, you'll pause. From there, you're going to begin to lift your whole leg in that bent position towards the sky and back down, and then follow back down with the arm. I'll talk you through it again. The right arm drifts up, finding a way that you feel the ease in that movement. Pause it when it's point towards the sky. Lift the right leg up and then bring it back, both back down at the same time. We'll do it again. Right arm up. Bring the right leg up. Pause the right arm now and just bring the right leg down and then bring it back up and bring it back down. And just follow it however you can do it, where you don't change your breath and you stay easy in your body. So your arms staying in the vertical and your legs kind of pumping. It's going back and down and front. Now, when you're ready, take them both down and rest again. For time, we're going to pretty much do this on one side of the body, and then later on, if you want to do some of it on the other side. But we will affect the other side, not to worry. Now, what you'll do now, the right arm will come up. As it reaches the vertical, then you lift the right leg up and you continue until it can't go further because the left leg's going to stay on the floor. And then you bring yourself all the way back. Let's try that again. You'll bring your right arm up first. So you bring the right arm and then it's vertical. Then you bring the right knee in the air and then you continue both together only as far that the left leg stays resting on the floor. So we're making a few, if pause for a moment, think of this like music. There are notes and we're changing the timing and we're playing with the notes of the timing. And so when you have to, and don't worry, if you get hung up on anything, it doesn't matter. We're really playing with something that's kind of foolproof, okay? So we'll do one more. Right arm comes up. And then the right knee comes up when it's vertical, and they travel back. And they come all the way back, and they rest again. Now, describe the next move, because you'll want to do it where you flow with the movement. We'll continue with the same thing, but when the right arm and right leg are at their far range, then the left leg will come over as well, but the left arm has to stay behind. So the right arm comes up. We'll do it now. Right knee comes up. We continue. The left leg comes up and we go across as far until the left arm wants to come. We're not going to let it, and we're going to bring everything back in position. So once again, the right arm comes up and the right knee comes up. They continue. The left knee follows, keeping that open space until the left arm wants to come, and then we reverse it. There's a lot of smoothness I want you to practice with this. One is the smoothness of your breath. And we'll repeat it. Right arm up, right leg up, left leg follows, and then the left leg and arm and leg come back. Pause on your side. Now the fourth part of this movement sequence is we'll do the right arm, the right leg, the left leg, and then the left arm in that order. And once you free up the left arm, you'll notice you'll go all the way on the other side. So let's do that. Right arm comes up, right knee comes up. Continue, your left knee comes up. You continue until you have to bring the left arm up and you match it over on the other side. Take the left arm up, left knee up, right knee up, and come all the way back over. And just go from one on your own timing. Right arm, right knee, left leg, left arm. And then keep coming back the way you came. Now, this takes a bit of focus. And what you might notice is paying attention to the breath becomes a little bit more of a challenge. But when you're at home and when you're off doing things with your mask on, you're going to have other things to distract your attention. Do it one more time to each side. And then stop in the middle, move your head support, slide your legs down, and rest. And take a moment to notice your contact. Note any differences. Stay as easily in your body as you are now, and take your time and roll yourself to your side and come up slowly to sitting. And take a moment to feel your support. Notice where you can ease your breath. How does it change when you're upright? Now reach for your mask. Mine's had better times. So place it on and take a moment to feel. Allow yourself to notice your breath with your eyes open and observe without rolling the eyes. Observe the space of the room. You can have tone in your belly without having it hard. So, what allows you to have support in your abdomen, your belly, without gut wrenching it? And can you keep this easy breathing and slow it down? Enabling yourself to take in the space of the room. And can you draw in or map in where your eyes are limited on your peripheral vision? So sense the space behind you. How far away are you to the closest object? Remember the back side of the support you had on the floor. Later today, when you're sitting in a chair that has a back, lean against it. put your mask on, and review some of the things that you did with the lesson. So, my takeaway is to take it away, is to know that you have choices and you can subscribe to finding easier ways to do many of the things that we do with more effort than we probably are conscious to. The things I would have you notice is the effort. As talking, I don't have a voice that carries very much, so I find that I'm actually forcing my voice through the mask, so that's another type of effort. So I try and recognize when I do that that I don't use my upper chest mechanics inefficiently. So I try and use whatever is what draws in some kind of discomfort. I realize I that's a prime opportunity for me to notice some things. So I try and go to the concept of feeling my skeletal support. That's always a good way to downregulate. Is what can happen is your breath pattern can actually accelerate because you're feeling the need of more oxygen, and we're getting more CO2 content coming back. So you may want to change what's called the stroke volume, the pattern of slowing it down, emptying the breath, letting the breath get a little bit easier so that the contraction of muscles aren't added on top of what we're doing with the airflow. The third thing is please remember to operate with a peripheral sense of space, visually and just kinesthetically, so that you enable yourself to create that virtual map relationship, that you are spatially aware of what's around you, what's concrete around you. Those things are all ways that can downregulate you when you are able to notice when you're having some effort with breathing. And we're not saying that you should always be downregulated. You may want to be upregulated, but you want choice. You want to be able to make sure that you're doing what you need to do at that point in time. And that's the end of the lesson. So I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions, any thoughts that may come up, or we're all wearing masks now. So I'd love to hear if and this is not a lesson that I obviously had in my kit. It's a series of lessons that I took with my own awareness of noticing some default patterns of me being more of a mouth breather as a result. And I started noticing that, realizing, that that was something that was getting easier for me to have a default mode to. So I wanted to be aware of that. So those are the things that I kind of sense. So any thoughts or comments? Sure. The beauty is there is a lot of virtual online resources that are free. And if you're interested and curious, I think that would be a great place to start. I'll try and remember some of the ones um, that I like to look at. But yeah, I think what's beautiful is that there we can get a lot of 3D, three-dimensional aspects of looking at the skeletal anatomy. And I think, yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that you want to know a little bit more. And if you're learning it, I believe through this entry, it's going to have a practical purpose. I learned anatomy by the scalpel, they think they call it, and although I loved anatomy, it's probably my favorite course, and had multiple courses, but in my physical therapy curriculum, it was very advanced. We had cadaver dissections, and so we had a lot of kinesthetic understandings about bodily anatomy, and a wonderful anatomy teacher. So I was fascinated, what the inside of us looked like, and then also the body world exhibits back when those were phenomenal to look at. And we do know that there's an upcoming exhibit on how they've upgraded it to include fascia. So that, that's that some of the top people like Robert Schleip, who is a scientist, Rolfer fascia expert. I know they consulted with that team, maybe Thomas Myers, I'm not sure, but yeah. So there's so many advances and things to look at online, uh, and I'm pretty biased about skeletons. I think they're fascinating. And the beauty behind the Body Worlds exhibits and things that were out there is to look at what real human skeletons look like. We're not these perfect symmetrical shapes at all. And the way we use our bones, there is a true law of physics that our bones shape to our actions. So if you have a heel spur, or you have a rim on your spine, which is a bone spur on your spine, all those things change. And if we all have a slight curvature because we use an asymmetrical pull of muscles after a while. So those things are pretty fascinating to understand things even a little deeper. Thank you, Barbara. To break up habits and to learn new healthier habits. Well, there's a wonderful book that was written by Dr. Bessel Cook, and it's called The Body Keeps Score. And one of the things that I think is important for us to learn is that once things are there, we're not going to eliminate it altogether. That those mappings are there, but they're they're more structurally there when we repeat them more. So one thing I find of value is Feldenkrais, being a physicist, mathematician, would encourage us to approximate. Yes, we want to attain a goal, but if we look at many, 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 variations of going in that direction, it's the process, it's the travel that really what we want to subscribe to. When we see a bad habit and we want to break it, we're looking at the gestalt of this large implemented pattern. But there's these lot of these little tiny, relationships of how we learned it to begin with. We used all our senses, so we can't just use one to try and override something that is strongly developed. So that's what's so valuable of using things that create variability. And these things have been brought out, there are movement puzzles, there are using things in a different way so that you are able to step into real time. And when you're in real time, that's an opportunity to see if you are doing the thing that you find unconsciously showing up sometimes. So let me give you an example. So let's say you just decide to brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. That's very goofy to begin with. So that right there is going to bring your attention. It's going to be less refined. Even the most ambidextrous, there's going to be a difference. And that might be a time, and maybe you find that, wow, I tend to really accentuate an arch in my low back. While that's going on, you can look to see, is that existing? And then you can play with it. What we like to do is it's kind of like you're teasing that relationship. You're not trying to push against it, because guess what? It pushes back. So if you then explore maybe things that we did today, playing with your breath, moving your belly, and while you're doing something that is not in your frame of reference of a habit, like brushing your teeth with your left hand, then when you put things down, that will show up somewhere else down the line that day
and that's how you can start to work with really why these are called awareness through movement, because that's the way to hack the system. Okay? So hopefully that helped a little, but keep asking those questions because that helps evolve understanding. And I think the more you can understand the process, the more you allow you're more allowing with yourself. You're gentle with yourself. You're not so hard if something shows up and you've been wanting to quit it or stop it. We all, I mean, a lot of habits are good. So we just want to prune the ones that are growing a little bit more than we'd like them to. Okay. Excellent. So the comment is that there is, even though you heard that, I just want to recap it, that the chest breathing was interesting. Well, this was case in point. We're not saying chest breathing's bad, but there are some schools of thought that say, you should only breathe through your diaphragm. You should only do this, da 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 da. Um, One of the things that you want your self-regulating system to do more of is discriminating the optimum. And truthfully, when we provide choices, that tends to surface more and more and more to the point where we don't have to pilot it so much. And that ease of going in and out of autopilot is really important that we play with that. And guess what? Every day is going to give us a new learning experience because that is the way things are, how we adapt to change and how we observe our biases. And that means in so many ways that concept. So thanks, Sandy. So I think there was an exhibit that I was being asked about. Exhibition of bodies. I'm not sure I know which reference. I would be very excited to know which one you're referencing. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, now it just dropped for me. Okay. The body world, I think it is. Yeah, yeah. No, no, I did catch that. In fact, they had a new add-on to their exhibit. In fact, this shows how it dates it. I brought a Cub Scout group to it in the way back when, and certainly had family members in on the process. But when the latter one is, did you go to it by chance? The latest one of the Body World exhibit. Well, they put people in function, and this was. Do you guys know where I'm going with this? So this one had to be behind a wall spaced off that you had to have adult discretion to go in to go observe. And it did. It had people in the coitus act and having anatomy observed in that. So yeah, it's there's it's very macabre to look at things sometimes in that realm, and so I think we need to respectfully appreciate, the people that donated themselves, and hopefully, anyway, I'll try not to get too politically with that, but they are awesome, awesome to look at because we can see they've illuminated so many things: the lymphatic system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, and now I'm very excited when the fascial system will start to show up because I think people do grasp things when they can have some visual orientation to things. Thank you, Barbara. Thanks for joining us. Yep. Okay. Thank you. I hope you will come back, tell more people to look at the Santa Monica yoga classes. I think I try and refer people every chance I get because I think you can look at the series of classes and see what seems to align with your interests. So please check it out. and have a good week.